Okay, it's 6 o'clock and time to call this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. It's July 15, 2013. Mr. Overfeld, we have a quorum, correct?
Yes, sir, we do.
Let the record show that a quorum of the board members is present. This meeting's been duly called and that notice of this meeting's been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence to reflect in your own way. Now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Brings us to agenda item 4, public comments. Ms. Falcone, are there any? No one registered for public comments. Agenda item 5, information items. First item being a presentation on the breakfast in the classroom survey. Ms. Valdez, CFO, presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. Again, this year we have continued with the Breakfast in the Classroom survey. It was sent out to the campuses on the participating Breakfast in the Classroom campuses on April 29th. Just to give you a little bit of history on Breakfast in the Classroom, which is in your memo, the program initiated at Dr. Fermin Calderon during the 10-11 school year. And then during the 11-12 school year, it was expanded to Garfield, Lonnie Green, and North Heights. This last school year, we added Ruben Chavita and Lamar. The only remaining campus is Buena Vista, which will be implemented in the 13-14 school year. In your packages, I included the 10 questions that were sent out in the survey. This survey was done using SurveyMonkey. And if you'd like, I'll take you through each question. On question number 1, please indicate the campus where you work. Each of the campuses, as you can see, that currently has breakfast in the classroom did participate in the survey, and it does list out how many individuals from each campus participated in their survey. The campus with the most participants was Lonnie Green, and they were in the Breakfast in the Classroom program in the prior year as well. The next question is, please indicate the grade level in which you teach. This includes grade levels, kinder through 5th, and non-grade level administration, which includes the nurse or cafeteria personnel and administrators. As you can see from the responses, the majority of the individuals that responded to the survey are in the classroom. Do y'all have any questions on that one? I should ask after each one if y'all have any questions. I'm sorry. No? Okay. On question number 3, this question was also presented in last year's survey. It says, with BIC, the number of hunger-related classroom disruptions has, and the one that received the majority of the responses has decreased. And last year, that was the one that also received the majority of the responses, that there was a decrease in hunger-related issues in the classroom with breakfast in the classroom. Number 4, the number of students visiting the nurse. Also, the majority of the responses were on the decreased area. And last year, it was also the same area that received the majority of the responses, that the number of visits to the nurse have reduced due to hunger-related issues. Question number 5. Eating breakfast improves students' readiness to learn and overall classroom performance. The majority of the responses, almost 95.4%, were between strongly agree and agree. Number 6, most students under my supervision eat the breakfast provided as part of the Breakfast in the Classroom program. 70% of the responses selected agree. Question number 7. The menu selection or variety of food choices are, and the majority, well, it's broken out between the majority of the responses being between satisfactory and fair. If you combine excellent, satisfactory, and fair, that it adds up to 72% of the responses. And the method of distribution, the majority of the responses was satisfactory. But if you combine excellent and satisfactory and fair, that's 89% of the responses that responded to that. The one area that this survey has identified where we will implement some improvements is in the custodial or in the classroom cleanup. They did indicate that there were some problems or significant problems. On question number 10 is where the participants were allowed to input any suggestions, any comments that they would like to make. And from those comments, just like last year, Ms. Hernandez created a list of 8 changes that will be implemented for the upcoming Breakfast in the Classroom year. And the one that's the number 1 issue was adding more antibacterial wipes in order to have better cleanup after the students finished eating. There's also requested for more fresh fruit, so she's going to add that also to the menu. There was also a suggestion that they not only have 1 flavor of milk, but that they have 2. And so, again, they were going to have 50% chocolate milk and 50% white milk available. Menu adjustments were suggested, and she's going to search, of course, for the healthiest options regarding those menu options. And one of them that they recommended that she bring back is the breakfast pizza. So it's a bagel with cheese. So she's going to look into that to see if they're still providing those. There were some campuses that had a variation to their breakfast in the classroom where they would take their kinder and first and have that in the cafeteria. So she is going to visit with those campuses because that was a suggestion that change. She is going to visit with those campuses to understand how that program worked in order to communicate that to the rest of the campuses for that to be an option that they can explore. And she's going to look into the custodial involvement and maybe set up a process or understanding as to what needs to happen when the students' breakfasts are over. And she's going to suggest, empowering the students. She did find 1 school district that has a breakfast sheriff, and that changes every week so that they empower the students in order to take that control or take that initiative on making their breakfast in the classroom a better process. Do y'all have any questions?
Mr. Overfield, I think that's...
On the additional comments there, I would like to have seen all of that in this particular packet that we got there, because I'm sure there's stuff that's on those responses that's not being told right now, and I'd like to see that. And then the other thing is on question 7, menu selection and variety of food choices. There talked about satisfactory and fair, but when you go and you look at the numbers, they're fair and poor easily outweigh the other way there. I mean, we're looking at 60-something percent and fair to poor, and this is what we're giving our kids every morning there. And if they're not happy with it, that's... I'm not looking at the fair to satisfactory thing there.
Okay.
The fair to poor is over 60-something percent, so obviously the teachers who are on the front lines with our kids are seeing more of campuses, and I know through the survey you were talking about she was going to try and address some of that, but that's a pretty big number there in my eyes. I don't know about anyone else on the board, but it is on mine. And then, of course, the other thing is the responses.
Okay,
Because to see this here, but to hear from the teachers themselves in conversation.
now the survey doesn't allow you to just print number 10 with all of that. It'll print all 159 pages of it. We could, not everybody had responses, but we could remove the ones that didn't have responses to the ones that just did.
Yes, sir.
If it pleases the board, we will include the responses. We'll figure out a way to, in the next board update. Will that meet your expectations?
Okay.
I'll start with the positive first. I think, first of all, the participation rate went up quite a bit, and we are in a low socioeconomic. A lot of our students are low socioeconomic, so I'm glad to see a lot of students participate with the breakfast program. And the other one is a concern, and basically for those principals that are here, the response rate from the campuses, I mean, the highest being 25%, the responses are not valid. I mean, to me, I would like to see 51+% from each campus. I think the responses, to me, don't become valid until you have at least half of the teachers from, being in the program, in the classrooms, and having this program in place respond to it. Because 25% is a very low response, and so we could get, responses that are not the majority.
Right. Our participation rate did increase. Last year, we only had 68, and this year we had 159. And we only added 2 campuses this year. So there was an increase, and we did see that,
Yeah, no, I'm
which is
talking about
positive. But I understand there's not,
breakfast participation.
yes.
There were a lot less students participating in that, and now, because it's being brought to the classroom more, are enjoying the breakfasts. And so, a lot of times, for different factors, whether the bus gets are late or whether the parents bring the student late, they weren't participating. And so, I'm glad to see that we have more students eating breakfast.
Yes.
But I would like to see the response from individual campuses on the survey.
Yes. I did, we were trying to brainstorm, and I asked Ms. Hernandez to meet with the principals and maybe coordinate a committee. We need other ways in which we communicate, and that communication comes back so that we can continue to improve the program.
Whatever works, whether it's an incentive, an apple for a response.
Is the survey anonymous?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because to Mr. Mess's point, I mean, validity, really, the threshold's a third or more in terms of surveys. So if it's 25%, the number's kind of low. I did also notice, in terms of the content of the survey, and I'm assuming that question 3, 4, and 5 were goals of the program when it was implemented, right? Because those questions seem to be something that's measurable, that's something that's very definite. Is that what the program, some of the key features of what the program is supposed to achieve?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that is something that Ms. Hernandez communicates as well.
Because the other questions were really operational about how the program is being handled or managed. Okay. Anything else? I think it's great. Just looking at it from an assessment standpoint, that's all.
Thank you.
We ready to move on? No more questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to B, presentation of the Garfield Elementary Campus Snapshot. Dr. Garza and Ms. Diaz presenting.
Mr. Gabridian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, this is a continuation of the presentations we had on the last board meeting. We have here with us Mrs. Diaz, and Mr. Ramos will follow her. It's the same thing. It's part of the SIP, the AYP program. They chose to get a snapshot at their campus, and at this time, Mrs. Diaz will present.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, hold on. I need to present.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board, I'm here tonight, as Dr. Garza stated, to present the snapshot for Garfield Elementary. With me are my two assistant principals, Mrs. Florida and Mrs. Westlake, so they are both with me tonight. As Dr. Garza mentioned, we chose to conduct the campus snapshot to try to see how we could improve our school. In every aspect, they looked at the 9 principles of high-performing schools, and we decided this would be a way for us to make some improvements. In 2011, our school grew from 630 kids to 857 kids. So we were dealing with a lot of changes, and we felt like if we could get someone from the outside to give us some insight on things that they thought would help us, that would be something beneficial for our campus. So Region 15 came in and they collected various types of data, and they also spent a day on campus in every single classroom, from instructional to non-instructional classrooms. They also met with parents, met with students, met with teachers, and they came up with 3 opportunities for impact. This was their title, that they felt would help Garfield Elementary. The first one says that for us to continue to increase the level of rigor in all classrooms for all students, especially English language learners. Number 2, authentically engage students to ensure deep understanding of standards and to be able to differentiate between student engagement and compliance. And with number 2, basically what they saw was students doing what they were supposed to do, but not to the level that it needs to be done, that we really needed to make it more authentic and more rigorous. And then number 3, increased level of meaningful involvement by parents and communities. So those were the 3 areas that they felt that Garfield needed to focus on. Their recommendations were for us to conduct campus-wide trainings on formative assessments and strategies for reluctant learners. Their second recommendation was to clearly define authentic students' engagements so that teachers are able to differentiate between student engagement and compliance, that we had a lot of teacher-directed instruction. Continue to utilize the PLCs to ensure a deep understanding of grade level and subject standards. Number 3, create a parental involvement plan and utilize a community facility meeting place for town hall meetings to increase parental involvement and create meaningful opportunities for parents to feel welcome. Our plan of action for 2013-2014, and some of this has already taken place. Some of it started since the spring, and some of these trainings we had already requested even prior to the snapshot. One of the trainings that we had was effective questioning, and they trained the teachers on effective questioning as a strategy in the classroom, and then they came back and trained the administrators, so that way we would know what we need to be looking for in the classroom and what type of feedback and support we could provide the teachers. The second training that they came in and did for Garfield was on formative assessments, and they did training and coaching. We had teachers from all grade levels trained, and then they became trainers and went to train their grade levels on how to create better formative assessments. My assistant principal, Mrs. Westlake, led a book study on the 7 keys to comprehension, and we adopted these methods K through 2. They're just strong comprehension strategies, and that way we were aligned and all teachers were on the same page. The teachers read the book, we discussed it, and then they saw modeling of those strategies in their classroom. And then we also did using think alouds and provided observations and feedback just to try to help our teachers with increasing the engagement of the students in the classroom. Included in our plan of action is also to implement the district planning protocol in order to effectively plan for instruction that is rigorous, targeted, and differentiated. We're very excited about the planning protocol that is going to be adopted for this school year, and we really feel that that's going to help our teachers tremendously in understanding their standards, their TEKS, and where our students need to be. This will allow us to monitor the implementation of instructional strategies learned during staff developments from previous and upcoming staff development. Administration will provide constructive and effective feedback after the walkthroughs. We will continue to utilize data to effectively plan for instruction and remediation, acceleration of student learning, and continue to ensure structure in the areas of instruction, procedures, and to promote public relations. And then finally, we want to utilize the campus leadership team to develop a parental involvement plan. And my assistant principal, Mrs. Correa, took the leading role on this target in the plan of action. And in the spring of 2013, she started our VIP program, which was our very important parents volunteer program. And they came to the school every Wednesday and helped in the library, helped in the classroom. And we just got them as involved as possible, and we had a great turnout. We had a huge number of parents that signed up to volunteer. Some of the closing remarks from Region 15. Based on the campus snapshot, and these were comments that were made by Region 15, Garfield Elementary has made great strides in establishing school-wide procedures that contribute to an environment for continued student success. Campus is utilizing PLCs to promote success, and the staff appears ready to take the next improvement step, focusing on increased rigor and authentic student engagement. And although our scores are nowhere near where we want them to be, we were very pleased that our scores are moving in the right direction and that we did see huge gains, and we really feel by implementing our plan of action, we're going to continue to see great strides in student achievement at Garfield. Are there any questions?
Dr. Keyes has a question.
Your formative assessment, what are you utilizing for your formative assessment?
In the past, Dr. Keyes, formative assessments were seen more as short quizzes, short tests on Fridays. And that's really what we're trying to pull away from. We're trying to make it something that's a little bit more hands-on, something that involves a little bit more of student engagement. We've talked about think, pair, share activities, share with a partner, do a Venn diagram, something that's a little bit more than just a multiple choice question and answer.
So they're not getting confused with the benchmarks?
No, the formative assessments are completely different from
Yeah, because the
benchmarks.
benchmark, that's your baseline test.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. There's basically 3 types of assessments. The first one would be the formatives, which are just where you're checking for understanding. Then we have our learning targets, which are done at the end of the 6 weeks to test what's been taught. And then we have our benchmarks, which is our indicator of where we are as far as preparing kids for STAR.
Question.
Mr. Mesa?
Ms. Yes, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
On English language learners, my question is, let's say usage of technology available, computer labs, do you monitor, let's say, the bilingual classes and their usage of the labs that are available to them?
Absolutely. This year we used iStations, and not only do we monitor how much time they're spending on the computer, but also how much time it's taking them to move from one tier to the next. iStation tiers them into Tier 3, Tier 2, Tier 1. Tier 3 is your severely at-risk struggling kids. So we do monitor to make sure that they're getting the interventions that they need based on the computer instruction.
So let me see if I can break down the question even further.
Okay.
Do you get detailed reports from the computer lab manager?
As far as hours spent?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you compare it with from classroom to classroom? Let's say bilingual, because of English language learners.
Right now, that each class, whether it was a bilingual class or a general ed class, they received the same amount of time in the computer lab. What we did was, depending on if you were a Tier 3 student, then you may have gotten additional time. Most of our English language learners are Tier 3 students, so they would have gotten more time in the computer lab setting.
Okay, then one other
But
question.
it's not based on classroom, it's based on student.
Okay, but you do have the classes scheduled going to the computer lab at a certain time.
Yes. And then we have blocks that might be just for second grade Tier 3. So we might have 4 teachers that at this time you send your Tier 3 kids. And that's how those kids get additional time.
Okay, so do you provide incentives, let's say for the classroom that logged the most hours?
No, sir, we do
No.
not.
Because I've been there, done that. I mean, a teacher can call and say, I'm not going to the computer lab today. And then next week, Something else come up, I'm not going to the computer lab today. In the meantime, the computers sit idle, and the additional instruction, which, some of the software that we spend, is costly, and so, the students do not benefit from that, but it's easy to cancel going to the lab.
Right, and I feel like I can honestly say we don't have a big concern with teachers canceling to go to the lab. With the number of students we have, both of our labs are fully occupied almost every second of the day. As a matter of fact, we wish we had another lab so we could give them more time.
I guess what I'm saying is, on the lab reports, the numbers should be consistent from one classroom, whether it's first grade, second, I don't know if you break them through the primary grades, third, fourth, or fifth, but they should approximately have the same number of logged hours because of the schedule that you have.
Correct. And they do. And then you have those students that have even more than that because of where they are.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chavita?
On the campus, on staff ready to take the next improvement, how many new teachers will you have on staff?
For this coming school year, probably about 4. So everybody, the majority of the staff, because we're looking at 42 K through 5 teachers. So out of the 42, 4 will be new teachers to our campus, and possibly 2 might be fresh out of college teachers.
I just, I'm just thinking about the turnover that we have, district-wise,
Right,
because, we spend a lot of time training them,
exactly.
leave, and then we gotta start again. So I guess you would really focus on those 4 teachers to make sure that they get on board.
And a positive thing is they're not all in the same grade level, so they would be joining a cluster that has
Where
been,
they can-
that has been working together, that has had this training, and that knows the direction and the vision that we're wanting to implement.
Thank you.
Anything else on this item? Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 5C, presentation of the San Felipe Memorial Middle School campus snapshot. Dr. Garza and Mr. Ramos presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the school board. I'm here to present tonight to you the summary of a campus snapshot report that was conducted by Region 15 on December the 4th, 2012, with Mr. Dean Munn being the director. The findings that were concluded after they did the same surveys that they conducted with all the other campuses was, number one, that the mission statement is posted, but it is not known by everyone, and that included parents, teachers, and all of the other administrative staff. The second thing that they asked was to establish a culture of high expectations with authentic student learning. Engagement. The third one was to decrease teacher-driven instruction. They saw way too much teacher instruction and not enough of the students being active. Number 4 is the academic rigor should be increased by using C-scope as a framework. And number 5, the duty staff should use time to establish relationships with the students. Their recommendations were as followed. Create unity and buy-in with a clear and focused understanding of a campus mission. Professional development should focus on increasing student involvement. Conduct focused walkthroughs, provide feedback on student engagement, and establish an expectation for teachers to greet, redirect behavior, and establish relationships with the students. The plan of action for 2013-2014, and yes, we've already taken action on it, is number 1, create an awareness of the current mission statement. And that was the first thing we did, because we didn't, it's been posted in several websites and even in our district SOP, and some of the teachers did not know it. And this summer before school starts, we are going to sit down and see if we need to develop a new mission statement if there is a need for it. We will also continue to work with C&I in providing professional development for teachers to ensure teaching is at its highest level. And I must say that we have become very proactive in that area. I know that we have had multiple trainings from different people from Region 15 and also contracted services. Assure that the district planning protocol is implemented in every planning session. And finally, the expectations shall be set and monitored that all teachers will use their duty time to establish positive relationships with students. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chivita has.
Yes, sir.
Especially on those recommendations, establishing the expectation for teachers to redirect behavior, et cetera. It sure makes a difference when, and I've done that, I'm saying this because of experience. I remember way back, my years, we had a kid that had over 100 abscesses and was promoted to the 8th grade. And what I would do, I would ask, some of the problems that some of the kids, and that was my, I guess, focus on that kid to make sure that he was in school most of the time. So I learned his schedule. I was there, greeting him every day. He was absent one day the whole year, and he apologized for being absent. Because every time that he got out of the classroom, I was there. And what I did, I knew exactly how he looked, and most of the trouble people. They looked at me, you know my name? I says, yeah. They didn't know that I spent a lot of summer looking over the yearbook, making sure that so it does, and I think it makes a lot of difference. I'm glad that somebody brought it up.
I agree with you, Coach. That's one of the things that I try to utilize every morning, go and talk with the kids, but I just want it to be part of the teachers also. It does make a difference.
That's great.
Dr. Keys.
Mr. Ramos, under findings, number 4, as a campus leader, do you feel that there's validity to that finding, or do you feel that TEA is pushing C-scope? I mean, that's their baby.
Right. No, you know what I think, Dr. Keys? The academic rigor was a slap in the face when the test, we finally saw it. We had always heard of academic rigor, and we thought we were doing an awesome job, and until it finally came down, where we can actually see it, I think that, yes, and I think the best tool out there is the C-scope right now. If there's anything else out there, I don't know of it, and I wish somebody else would share that with us, but as far as, is it the proper instrument that we're using? Well, it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. But I do believe that that is the proper thing that we need to use right now.
So you feel that finding is valid for your campus?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Dr. Rios has a comment.
Dr. Keys, on specifically in relation to C-scope, what this item very clearly states is that C-scope should be used as a framework. And I think the key there should be on framework versus an actual curriculum. So if we look at taking C-scope and taking the lessons within C-scope and just blindly following the lessons, then that would be a mistake. But very clearly here they say a framework which guides,
Used as a guide.
used as a guide to develop the rigor for instruction, which is really the direction that the state moved in by removing the lessons that are tied to C-scope. So as a district, that's where I hope to guide all of our instruction, where it's clearly used as a framework. It's something that I've believed for a long time, and I think that's a key framework, not necessarily
A script everyone
exactly
follow.
correct. So I think by using the word framework, they're onto something positive there.
And this might be a question more for Dr. Garza, and we might be kind of jumping ahead. On the subject of rigor, right, we're talking about secondary, 6th grade now. You take English, for example. It's one thing to assign Hemingway and Faulkner. It's another for students to learn what to do with it, right? How to elaborate on it, how to think critically. So I assume that in terms of professional development, the workshops and things that are planned, that a lot of that's addressed. And this is getting to the point of what they're talking about as a framework as opposed to the lesson. So is that kind of in the works?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Exactly. The framework that we have at the school district is something that we're following by C-scope. They're telling us exactly what to teach. Okay, that we pulled that out. But one of the things that is going to start this year is actually having those planning sessions where we have some guided questions that will help the teachers make students understand the higher level of thinking not necessarily the difficulty in it, but the thinking level.
Because that's rigor,
That
one
is
of the
what we want to
definitions.
emphasize. Having some guided questions that will spark some conversations of thinking, not necessarily that you know what Romeo and Juliet is.
Anybody else?
That's what crack method.
Yes, sir, and that is one of our strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 6, which is a consent agenda. Consent A, being consideration to approve minutes of the following meetings. Those are the June 17th, 2013 regular school board meeting and the June 27th, 2013 budget workshop special called meeting. On either of those, does any board member wish to pull an item for discussion? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent A agenda? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. That brings us to consent B. Does any board member wish to pull any items from the consent B agenda for discussion? No? Is there a motion to approve the items on the consent B agenda? Mr. Chavita has motion, Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. No, okay, before we move on, as is the custom, to read the donations. Any board member wish to read donations? Any volunteers? Mr. Overfelt, would you like to do that again?
Is there a list?
Actually, I wasn't given a list, but it's just
okay.
right there on the thing.
Alrighty. Donations. Donation to Delro Middle School from Life Touch in the amount of $122.98. Donation to Delro High School from Funding Factory in the amount of $81. To be used for year-end luncheon and teacher appreciation. Donation to Garfield from Pro Color Studio in the amount of $737 for student incentives. Donation to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary from Emily Ray Photography in the amount of $906 for student incentives. Donation to Delro High School Certified Nursing Assistant Program from the Texas Department of State Health Services. One health educational game and 17 anatomical models valued at $50. Consideration to approve donation to Delro High School welding program from Sigmatron International for an axial sequencer and dual head VCD axial inserter machines valued at $200. And I believe that was the donations.
Okay. Well, thank you. We certainly appreciate everyone organizations and individuals that donated to support students and programs in the district. Brings us to agenda item 8, discussion action items. First A, consideration to approve the Buena Vista Elementary Gym Project Design Development Phase. Mr. Salinas is not here tonight. Dr. Rios and Mr. Brown will be presenting. Dr. Rios?
Brown will come to the front and take us through a PowerPoint, but I would just like to introduce it by saying at the last board meeting, the board approved to move forward with the construction of a gym at Buena Vista, being the only elementary school that does not have a gym. We also approved the delivery method. Hopefully after tonight, you'll approve the next step, and we'll be able to go out for bids. It is our hope that at the next meeting in August, that we're able to bring an action item to move forward with the construction and some contracts. So, sir, you'll take us through your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Rios. Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, it's good to be with you tonight. As Dr. Rios indicated to you, we've moved forward with this project. It was approved last month in slightly more than 3 weeks, not a little less than a month. We've accomplished a lot of things, and we're bringing you a design development package that should give you the indication of the character and the scope of the project, some decisions that we've made to bring you all up to speed on those decisions. As Dr. Rios indicated, our goal would be to come back to you in August with final working drawings. And by final working drawings, what that means bid documents that contractors can price out, a set of blueprints and a set of specifications that set forth the quality and the processes that will govern the project. If it's acceptable and satisfactory to the board, then we'll go out for competitive seal proposals, receive those in September, and hopefully start. Our target is to break ground or to at least award a contract on October 1st. The goal is to be finished by August 1st, of course, and that's what we intend to do. So with that said, I'll just briefly, let's just do it this way. First slide, I've got a brief PowerPoint here, and feel free to stop me at any point. But I think it's fairly self-explanatory. The aerial overall, as everybody understands, Echo Valley to one side, and Amistad across the front of the site. This has got a, if I remember correctly, where it is. That one. Nope. No, that one. There, I figured it out. As all of it is, okay, quit it. I killed the whole thing. Wait a minute, we'll get it here in a minute. I want that way. I want the light. That's all I want, just the light. The site, as we all know, is pretty much broke. Okay, I give up. Let's just do this. I'll just do this. The site, as we know, is broken by, see the red line on there? And we'll point to it. The red line is basically a bluff of about 8 to 12 feet tall. One of the things we have to do is we have to have a topographic survey done. That is one of the things we've accomplished in the sense it's been authorized, it's been executed. We're simply waiting for the drawings, and we should receive those this week. Because of the nature of the site and the locations that we considered, these two on the bottom, the yellow and the gold, were site potentials, but they both involve displacing the play areas, and they would both be very, very invasive in terms of the daily operations of the school while construction was going on. So in working with staff, we've determined that the gold, the sort of yellowish gold at the top there at the very end of wing B, dare I try this again? Right there. Is probably the best place to put this, because as you can see, it kind of moves us away from the bluff, and it basically does not displace. Now, it does displace a small amount of parking, and I'll discuss that with you in just a moment. That's where we're placing the building. This is an 8,000 square foot footprint. We've done a lot of work on the building plan itself, and I'll go through that here with you in just a second. But basically, the building will be placed at the end of the existing wing B. As I indicated, it was displaced some parking, and I've got a schematic on how we can resolve that. But that's basically where the building would be. It would be connected. There's a center hallway right through the wing, and it would come right out of the hallway and into the that way. Yeah. Anyway, right into the building. It would not be an enclosed hallway. It's not going to be air conditioned, and it's just going to be another breezeway that school has lots of them. It also allows us to tie into a sidewalk that runs along the west side of wing B here as well. But more importantly, it retains existing play areas in both cases. Well, that one, and we'll talk about this thing. Maybe I'll get the hang of this sooner or later. Maybe I'll just stop using it. The plan is very well developed. The plan is about an 8,000 square foot building. It's very, very similar to what we did at Lamar. It's got a full-size basketball court, a 50 foot by 80 foot high school basketball court. It's got modular PE flooring systems that the district has used very satisfactorily with great success. There's striping around the outside to allow for students to queue up and line up and the sorts of activities that teachers need. It's a good plan. It's been well thought out. This is a little bit different. It's pretty much like we did at Lamar. If any of you have seen Lamar, it's a little different than Lamar in that in response to requests, we've created a mezzanine area up above the end. Please don't do this to me. That will go right above this area right here. Here's a mezzanine over here, primarily for storage. We'll have some air conditioning ducts up there, but for the most part, it's just nothing but storage, something that's badly needed on this campus. The plan itself includes a relatively large storage area for storage of mats and physical education equipment, an office for a couple of coaches, their own private toilet, 2 fairly generously sized boys and girls restrooms, and then a janitor's closet right there. The basketball court itself is a typical high school basketball court with 4 cross courts. The exterior, we're real comfortable with the interior. We know what it's gonna do. We've been there and we're very comfortable with that. The exterior, we're still working on a little bit. It's not as well developed as I'd like it, but we would ask you to approve it with the idea. This is a very conservative approach. We're gonna try to do a little bit better. I think we can. Part of the problem is if you consider it a problem, I guess. Some people would say it's an opportunity. I think it's a problem because the building is constructed, I'm sure all of you are aware, with what we call 8-rib concrete block. It's a convex flute. As you can see, it goes in and out. It was very popular at the time. It hasn't been used in a long time, but it's a very iconic part of that campus, and we do not want to get away with it. The thing that's given us a little bit of heartburn is the metal fascia that runs around the building. This is wing B, but the opposite counterpart wing across the way, wing D, is actually what this originally was, which is a dark brown. Okay, so we've got this kind of green color. These panels have all been painted. So we've got this kind of green color we're working with and the brown color we're working with. And our original thought was to do something like this, which I think would be attractive and is doable. This would be the 8-rib split-faced concrete block we're talking about. These would be, in this case, this is viewed from the B-wing. This is the actual covered canopy that runs across. This is the connecting hallway or connecting outside breezeway with doors into the gyms at both ends. And then this metal panel system would match basically what's there. The thing we have to study a little bit is that in order to match it, we may have to paint it. I don't really want to do that. So we're going to study this a little bit if it's all right with y'all. I don't think the basic massing of the building, the proportion, the scale is going to change at all. But what might change might be this panel system across here like this. In any event, the roof panels where we have covers will in fact match the existing, because that makes sense. But where we're attaching it to the building, I want to investigate, Tom and I would like to investigate using masonry banding instead of introducing an entire new material that we don't know that will really match. So we're still working on this a little bit. But the basic concept, I think, is in place. The basic concept is valid, and I don't see it changing much. I'd be glad to bring you back. As we develop this, we can bring you back some more elevations and kind of show you, but I think it'll work fine. Now, these are the ongoing tasks. Y'all approved the delivery method last month, as Dr. Rios indicated. What that amounts to is, upon y'all's authorization, we finish the working drawings. Upon y'all's authorization, we go out into the market and take competitive sealed proposals, and basically what that means is they give us a price, and they tell us why they're the best guy for the job. That's what it gets down to. And we consider certain criteria that I believe the board has seen before, and we can discuss if you like. But basically, the monetary portion of it is 60% of the consideration. It's the most, but we certainly consider other things. We very specifically have language in there that speaks to a timely completion of the project, which we know is a big issue because we want this thing finished in time for school. So that happened last month. We have authorized the geotechnical analysis. It is complete. We expect that report due next week. What that does is that is drilling into the foundation to tell us what is the most efficient type of foundation to use under this building. There's different ways of doing things. There's slabs on grades, and there's concrete on piers, and we want to pick the one that is the most efficient, basically, and the most cost efficient, frankly. So that we should get that back. We don't really anticipate any great surprises there. The topographical study is complete. It also is due this week. This one is a concern because, as you remember from the site, this thing is going to be placed on the downside of that bluff, and we really need to think about drainage and the relationship to the bluff and all that other sort of stuff. Once we get the topographical survey, we will be able to do that. We think by moving to the building, the location it's located at now, it's got it away from the bluff, and we don't really anticipate any problems, but we want to run that trap. So we're still working on that. We want to have a pre-development meeting with the city. The city has lots of input and reasons for input on a project like this. They need to be able to access the building for fire. They need to know what we're doing for a lot of reasons. And so we want to run that by them so that if they have concerns, we can address those concerns early on as opposed to later on. So that's our goal there. That's to be scheduled probably next week. The last thing I'd like to present for you is we did a little parking study. In the process of doing this and building this building, there's our 8,000 footprint. There's the bluff. Here's the parking lot we're building into. We lose 21 spaces in doing that. And the question came up, can we supplement that? And the answer is yes, we can. The parking lot is not overwhelmingly used, but it is available and it is a necessity. So what we were going to present and recommend is building a parking lot right in here. There's a play area here that's not really very used because frankly, it's kind of hard to get to. This is the parent pickup and drop off, and we can get 34 spaces in there. We can do this, we think, within the existing budget. Wasn't really planned for, but we didn't, but we're not having to engage as much as the bluff as I had kind of thought we might have to when we were starting this thing. So we think that part of it will work out fine. There will be an entry here and an entry here. Staff parking. There's 12 visitor spaces up here, and all the rest of these are designated as staff parking. Currently, you have 104 total spaces, of which everything but 12 are staff parking. By the time we get finished, you'll have 117 net spaces with 105 for staff, which ought to be plenty for that school. I believe Mr. Salinas has done a check, and 80 was what he was hunting for. So, with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. I think the thing, we're actually, like I say, if you really look at the schedule, we're probably 2 weeks ahead of schedule, which is really a good thing because it probably won't last. But right now, we're rolling fast and we're rolling well. We urge your approval of this package, and we'll bring it back to you next month. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Lozano has a question.
I do, sir. What would be the backup plan for the parent, student drop-off? That flow works very well there. So when you're
It won't
building the parking, the extra parking spaces,
It won't change.
it won't
No,
change.
no, ma'am, the drive is still right there, it stays right there. There is, let me go back. I've been real good at going back, I ought to be able to do that pretty fast.
So while
That-
it's being built, it will still be functional.
Yes, ma'am, and we'll probably schedule that for next summer.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, we probably do that after school is out next year, because that's not but a 3-4 week
great.
piece of work.
Thank you.
Mr. Mesa, someone else?
That was pretty much my concern because, there's a circular path, and they drive in and they can either go right or left, and
Right.
so, I have no idea how the teachers will be able to get in while the lines are, because both lines are, when you go in there, I mean, some of the cars are facing the direction that this, circular driveway is going, and others are coming the opposite way.
Right. It-
And it's kind of hard to envision how the teachers can get in during the morning hours or afternoon hours.
Well, they'll just have to be on time, because we could consider, I guess, emptying out directly onto Echo Valley Drive with a single, we could study that. I'm not sure that's really gonna solve anything, because there's just as much traffic in Echo Drive in the mornings as there is.
Well, the other thing too, and because I go by every morning, my granddaughter, I drop off my granddaughter, and I don't see the spaces utilized for parking. The existing parking that we have right now. There's a lot of vacant spaces.
In that back lot, there is, yes, sir. Oops. This is the lot Mr. Mess is talking about right here. And we would end up cutting, see that aisle right there, we cut that short, leave a little turnaround there to where people can come and basically make another loop. We can study it, we could even take that as an alternate bid. It really doesn't affect anything we're doing. By alternate bid, what that means is we simply draw it up and have the contractor price it out, and the board can either accept it or not. If in fact, and in fairness to, I think, to staff, this has all happened in about a 3-week period, so there's probably a little more study needs to go on with the principal and a little more conversation. But we wanted to have a plan, if in fact this were.
I think what I'm trying to draw attention to is, in the past, we've utilized every area that we have there, including parking from a church, that
Right.
is there.
Across the
And
street.
so during the year, they said something happened, it's like, no more.
Mhm.
So we're using now the other church on the other side, and eventually, I hope nothing happens, but
Someone
it
across,
does not
someone
belong.
across the street.
It does
No, I
not belong to
understand.
the district. There's ceremonies there. I mean, there's funeral services and whatever else, and so it's not available on a daily basis. And so I'm thinking we're going to run out of options if that parking lot is done there. There's cars coming both directions, and it's hard for me to envision how the staff can get in and out, and then. Again, the way we're doing it right now is we're utilizing somebody else's property. And there can come a time where they can say, enough.
Well, I believe Mr. Salinas has checked into that, and 80 was the number he was hunting for, okay? So if we have 104 and you take 34 off of that, you're at 66, is that right? 66? Close. 68. But, and 68 spaces won't get everybody, but it should get most everybody, and so hopefully that, the use of that lot could be minimized, and maybe we only build half of it. Maybe we only do 17 on each side. Your point is well taken, Mr. Messrs, but there's just no other place on that site unless you go up the hill to do it.
Well, I think what I'd like to see is, again, if the principal, the administrators there could figure out, like, can we do with those less spaces and still accommodate? Because the way I'm envisioning the new parking area is just, there's no way that, there can be two lines, one coming and one, the opposite direction, and they're both going in there.
Right.
What is happening right now is they're being courteous and they're saying, okay, it's my turn, and then it's the other side's turn, and so that's how it's flowing.
Yes, sir.
But I don't envision that when there's some other teachers going into
Well,
that
we
area.
will be, this was done in concert with the principal, but we will continue to have those conversations with the principal. And then our thing was we just had to have a fallback in case you really do need 104 spaces. We can do that. Some of them may not be as good as others.
Hopefully we can do without,
If you can just do without it, then that would be great.
well, I mean, there's a lot of empty spaces, but I don't know if they're right to bicycle or what.
Yes, sir.
But if we can do without interrupting the flow of traffic there, I think we can solve the problem.
Okay.
Other questions, discussion? Mr. Brown, does that conclude your
Yes, that
presentation?
concludes my
Okay.
presentation.
Dr. Rios, here's the recommendation.
Recommendation of the administration that the San Felipe Del Rio C.I.S.D. Board of Trustees approve the Buena Vista Elementary Gym Project Design Development Phase documents as presented and authorize the administration to move forward with the construction document and bidding phases.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for your time.
Brings us to agenda item 8B, Val Verde Appraisal District Resolution to amend the 2013 budget by retaining $45,000 of the $95,525 surplus funds from 2012. Ms. Yannicani Valdez presenting.
Good evening again, Mr. Garabedian and Dr. Rios, board members. The appraisal district resubmitted their resolution based on recommendations from our last board meeting. I did also include in the memo what our portion would be from those two, from the resolution, one being to retain the surplus and the other for us to be refunded the excess. Ms. Sheedy is here if you do have any questions.
Questions from Ms. Sheedy? Dr. Keyes?
Yes, sir.
Can you please just clarify for me, the refund of the surplus funds, where does that money go to?
The refund would go to, we're gonna redo our roof.
Okay, and why do we have so much of surplus?
I had provided a sheet. There were several reasons. In legal, we have a pending lawsuit. It's dormant. There hasn't been any action on it, so money hasn't been spent on that. On our maintenance for our gas and fleet, we're still getting adjusted. We just got our fleet 2 years ago, and we're finally getting a handle on how much we will spend on our gas and maintenance yearly. Our building note, you had approved, along with the other entities, for us to pay off that building note. At the time it was approved to pay off the building note, we already had this budget adopted, so that's why we had the $11,000 left over there. Health insurance, I have an employee that is currently covered through the military by her husband, so we're not paying her premiums. Printing and postage depend on how many notices we have to mail out yearly. We could have to mail out close to $39,000 depending on what values due, and we usually don't have that determined until March of each year.
What happens if all of a sudden, for some unusual reason, we have catastrophic insurance costs gas prices go up, and then the litigation for the lawsuit comes out negative for the district. So we just charge, we kick in more money as an entity or what?
If we ever have a shortfall and we don't have money to pay for something, we have to do an amendment and come back to y'all and ask for more money.
Thank you.
Other questions? Discussion? Okay, recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the Val Verde Appraisal District resolution to amend the 2013 budget by retaining surplus funds from the 2012 in the amount of $45,000 with the S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D portion of $20,911 with 80 cents.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chivita's motion, Mr. Mesa second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 8C, consideration to approve the extension of the insurance consultant contract for the 2013-2015 biennium and to authorize the superintendent to sign the contract. Ms. Valdez presenting.
Good evening again. I'm bringing the Mr. Ralph's contract for your consideration. Mr. Ralph's has been the district's insurance consultant for the past 10 years, and he has provided valuable assistance with our actuarial information and assisting the school district in taking the health insurance fund from a deficit to a positive fund balance. Included under separate cover was Mr. Ralph's contract from First Financial, and the fee remains the same. It's a monthly fee of $1,900, and it's been the same fee for the past 10 years, it's my understanding, which would be a total of $22,800 for the year. Mr. Rouse would still be available, Mr. Rouse did mention that his travel would be more limited, but he would still make the annual board meeting in February to present the financial results once they're audited. Any questions?
Is he still planning on meeting with the insurance committee? That would be a
He
telephone
mentioned
conference?
it'd be limited, but we would include him via telephone conference, yes.
Other questions or discussion on this item? Okay, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration to approve the extension of the insurance consultant contract for the 2013-15 biennium and authorize the superintendent to sign the new contract.
We've heard the recommendation, and I so move that we accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chivita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to agenda item 8D, consideration to approve contract for services with Monica Sandoval for the Del Rio High School, Del Rio Middle School Color Guard Program. Mr. Nunez presenting.
Good evening, Superintendent Dr. Rios, Board President Mr. Garabedian, and members of the board. I come before the board for the approval of Monica Sandoval as a color guard consultant for the Del Rio High School and the Del Rio Middle School music band program. The color guard is a specialized field that requires training. None of our current staff has any of the color guard training, so outside consultants are able to help the band program. Ms. Sandoval has worked with the program for the past 7 years. She will be responsible for working with the color guard during class time and after school rehearsals. She will also be required to travel to competitions, football games, and any other activities that the color guard attends. Ms. Sandoval is also responsible for developing the color guard routines for the marching band, UIL shows, as well as routines for color guard competition.
Questions? Discussion? No? Okay, the recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contracts and authorization of payment as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt is motion, Ms. Haynes is second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brings us to 8E, consideration to approve contract for services with Wynn Godbold from B-Sharp for math curriculum with Title II funding for St. James. Presenter, Ms. Michelle Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, member of the board, members of the board. Every year as part of our NCLB grant application, we are required to solicit from the private schools an opportunity for them to participate in our grant. This year, St. James has decided to participate in our Title II professional development portion of the grant. So tonight, requesting your consideration to approve contract for services with Wynn Goodbold from B-Sharp for math curriculum with the Title II funding. The dates of service for professional development are August 20th. The fee is $1,000 plus travel, which includes airfare of $500 and rental vehicle of $80 and $50 for gas. The contract is in your packet under separate cover. Do we have any questions?
Mr. Chavita has a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you advertise, do you ask other schools to participate?
Yes, sir. We certainly do. We advertise in the paper, and we also send certified letters, and we follow up with phone calls as well. And we've had responses from St. James and Sacred Heart.
Other comments or questions for Ms. Smith? Okay, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contract, and authorization of payment is presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Is there a second? Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor, by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now 8F, consideration to approve contract for services with Global Training Academy for Drug Detector Dogs. Ms. Valdez will be presenting. Chief Haynes is not here with us tonight.
Good evening. Included under separate contract was a contract for services for Global Training Academy. We have been using this vendor to provide the drug detector dog searches, and we've been using them as long as I could look back at all our history in our financial system. The contract is for approximately $7,160, and it would be to conduct eight searches using the drug detector dogs, and it would only be at Del Rio High School freshman and middle school, not San Felipe Memorial Middle School, as I included in the memo. It would just be those 3 campuses. And the searches are done on a monthly basis. The date is not set, however, they do contact Chief Haynes in order to coordinate a date so that there isn't any interruptions with that campus testing dates. And the fee is the same fee as was presented last year when we requested approval.
Why not at the San Felipe Middle School?
I'm not sure, ma'am. I made a mistake of putting San Felipe Memorial Middle School in there, but when we spoke to Ms. Martinez, it was just the 3 campuses, and I researched the history of this vendor, and it's always just been those 3 campuses, but we can follow up with Chief Haynes.
Dr. Rios?
Thank you, Mr. Garber. It has been, and I know that you sent me an email requesting information earlier. It was, we're a little short-handed today, so I apologize for not getting back with you. But it has been the secondary campuses, excluding 6th grade. There is no legal basis why we couldn't do it in 6th grade. And if it's the wishes of the board, we can certainly amend the contract to include 6th grade or include additional visits if you so choose to direct me to do that. However, obviously, we would have to allocate more money, which we don't have a problem with. We just need your direction if you want us to do something different.
Would it be less expensive? I mean, if you needed to do it maybe on a, I'm gonna say PRN, as-needed basis or whatever. I see that any searches conducted beyond the high school, freshman and junior high school, would be billed at $95 an hour. I don't know how much it would cost to actually, how many hours does it take?
Having been a principal at the campuses, you can count on a campus like the middle school would be an hour. So by adding another campus, we would add an hour. But because of it's a contract that you're approving, and and we're gonna increase the amount to that contract, we would have to bring it back to you for approval. I think that,
But it's already part of this. I mean, it says any search is conducted beyond, I think that kind of leaves it open, should you need to maybe look at Garfield per se, I'm just throwing that out. Liza's gone. You know what I'm saying?
yes.
So maybe it would be covered.
Well, but I think what you're saying is on a permanent basis, so.
Yeah. That's the way I understood what you're saying. I was gonna ask, always
Do you think it would be
either
necessary?
have more and pay accordingly.
That's new difference. We might be covered with that. Did you see it? It's on the
Yes,
second page
I
at
saw
the
it.
top.
I saw it, and the recommendation doesn't, specify, dollar amount, so yes, we would be covered.
Just in case. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, the recommendation.
Okay, it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent to sign the contract with Global Training Academy.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motion, Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 8G, consideration to approve contract for services with Lisa Horton for Math Teaks Study. Presenter was going to be Ida Gomez, she's not with us. Presenting is Mr. Rudy Valdez.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, board members, Dr. Rios. I am here to present the following contract for consideration. Consultant services with Lisa Horton are being requested for 7th grade math teachers on July 16th and 17th, and for 8th grade math teachers on July 18th and 19th at Del Rio Middle School. The subject of the training is the new Math Teaks. The Teaks study will include introducing and understanding the specificity of the new Teaks, reviewing the side-by-side comparison charts developed by Lead Forward, and work on the units of study by completing their scope and sequence. The consultation fees will be paid for with the approved TIPS fund budget.
Questions? Discussion? No? Okay, the recommendation, please.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve consultation services with Lisa Horton and to pay the invoice when due.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 8H, consideration to approve one-to-one initiative at Del Rio Freshman School from the instructional materials allotment funds. Mr. Casillas presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. We have before you a proposal for your consideration and approval. And this is an initiative that we wanted to start based on instructional materials allotment funds that we had available to us. And I'm accompanied by my instructional technology coordinator. And we have before you the recommendation, but we did put together a little PowerPoint presentation to just kind of give you an insight on what it is that we want to do with this initiative. We have two goals, basically, for this coming year. After some consideration and discussion of where we wanted to start it, we decided to go with Freshman Campus, and this would basically provide a laptop to every student and every teacher. And then from that point on, we have some instructional goals that go with it. And there are a lot of things that bring this to mind. Well, like why freshmen? Well, the students coming over from 8th grade already have had 1 year of technology transition. So they are familiar with the Kuno tablets, they're familiar with internet browsing, they're familiar with the technology. And we felt that it would be almost a shame to have them with that exposure to technology and then not continue that trend. So we decided to start it off at the freshman. We also had a very deep commitment from the principal to help us to promote this initiative. And so we have the goals, of course, are going to involve technology, and it involves instruction, and we want to partner up with the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. And we want to kick it up a notch. The students are familiar with the technology, with web browsing. They're familiar with the curriculum law software. Now we want to kick it up a notch and bring them to the level of computer functionality or computer basic literacy that we want. So we have some ideas with staff training that Cheryl has helped me to develop. We also want to make sure that the students are trained, and we want to make sure that the parents are trained and familiar with the technology that we're going to hand out to the students. And Ms. Pond has something here that I'll let her continue with this.
Good evening. So we took our district goals and then we set up what the teacher goals will be and what the student goals will be. So our teacher goals, we would like to see them use the instructional technology for 80% of their instructional time, 80% over 180 days. That would allow us to train them over the year to really get the hang of getting technology into their lessons and into their student products. The objective is that teachers will integrate the technology. That will be measured through lesson plans, walkthroughs, and conversations and planning meetings that I will have with those teachers and instructional coaches. Students will use those laptops 80 to 100% of the time, in the classroom, outside of the classroom. We will monitor their use by looking at e-portfolios that we would ask the students to create so that we can see a body of work from September to May in varying courses and varying software. Our training objectives for teachers line up with the planning protocol, steps 4 and 5, instructional resources and support for all learners or differentiation. We would have teachers identify where they think they are in their technology integration. We want to make sure that they understand that the Microsoft Office suite that they use for their teacher productivity can be shared with students, that students can use those products that are installed standard on our laptops for projects. How many times do you use Word in your daily life? Our kids can use that as well. We want them to develop their literacy, web literacy, media literacy, and really understand what it means to be a 21st century learner. We are working on purchasing some documents. They're called quick source learning templates. They are a trifold of basically all the information you need to get started using Publisher, Microsoft Office, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Access. We would have those available for all students and teachers. Student training objectives, very similar to what our teachers would be doing. They will actually be using that Microsoft Office suite to create projects or create assignments that demonstrate their mastery of the content taught, develop their own literacy, media, and digital citizenship. They can also access Atomic Learning for any of that just-in-time learning. They don't know how to create a PowerPoint. They can log into Atomic Learning, watch the videos on the parts that they need to, and don't have to rely on their teacher being the PowerPoint expert. And again, they would have access to those quick source documents. Parents would be trained as well. We can train teachers and we can train students, but if our parents don't know how to use it or what the students are being required to do, we kind of fall short. So we want our parents to be aware of cyber safety, how important it is that their children are safe online. We want them to know that they have resources to help their students outside of the school day. And we want them to be familiar with our SEPA requirements. So some issues that we anticipate questions on tonight. Textbooks. We are researching traditional textbooks and digital textbooks so that they can be loaded on laptops. Resources, what's already out there, what can we create, what can we find, what can we bring to one central point for students, parents, and teachers to access. And paperwork, we need everybody to sign on the dotted line that they've received the technology, they understand how to use it, they're responsible for it, that it will be returned or whatever the district decides to do at the end of the laptop initiative. Questions so far before I turn it over to Mr. Casillas?
Dr. Keyes has a question.
I'm looking at your point there, it says missing damaged devices.
Look
Okay.
into that.
That's Mr. Casillas' part.
Oh, okay.
Just ask me questions on stuff I know.
I think Mr. Chavita had a question. Did you have a question
Yes.
at this time?
For one thing, Mr. Casillas, I was going to ask you, what is this initiative going to do for our kids? I'm glad you tell them this. But there's two questions. Number one, how do you plan to involve our parents? And number two, is in anything, there'll be different levels of kids being able to utilize their computers.
Well,
Probably because they have one at home and some of our kids don't have one at home.
and I
So
think,
how do you
yes, sir.
attack that issue?
Well, I think the main part with giving them the laptop is they don't need to be on the internet. So if the students don't have internet access at home, they have the software on their computer. So if the teachers provide the assignments, the activities or whatever, and they shoot them across through emails or through, we want to set up a Google Drive where they can share the files with the students. And if the students have access to that while in our district environment, when they go home, they don't need to have internet. They will have that accessibility through the laptops and they can work on their assignments, do whatever they need to do. So, it'd be nice if they have internet access at home, but if they don't, it should not stop them from working and participating with the electronic media. So, we feel like that is a big advantage. You asked Mr. Chavita about the parents. This is a giant step. It is. It was done very successfully at Dairy Middle School. It had varying degrees where the students, measured the growth with computer technology. But they have a Wi-Fi device that is based on internet activity. And here we have a device that they don't have to have that. So we want to make sure that the parents understand that when we give these students this technology, that there are certain levels of responsibility that we want to encourage the parents, if they want to come and learn the technology with us in the schools. So we're planning some parent training sessions, at the school. And by the way, Mrs. Gomez wants to partner Delray Middle School with this initiative in the sense that whatever we do with staff training, with parent training, with student training, she also wants us to share with her at the 8th grade. And I think that we stand to gain from that. On the other hand, we don't want it to stop there. We want to take this to a different level, to a different scale. And so, because we're thinking, okay, I think that we thought about the 8th grade with a TIPS grant. Well, what are we doing after that throughout the district? And so what we've already started discussions with Dell is that if we want to do a one-to-one initiative the following year at the high school, we can actually do it. They're willing to do a lease purchase at 0%, and so we can actually start that if we start making the plans this coming year. And in 4 years, we can pay off the lease of 2,000 laptops, and now we have them and we can use them for another 2 or 3 years. And there is the great return on our investment at that point. So we can use those, and then, we don't want to continue to lease year after year after year, but we want to have a few breaks in between because the technology changes. 4 years from now, who knows what kind of computers will be available. So there's a lot of things that we want to plan beyond that. We don't want to leave the elementary students behind. So part of our instructional technology program is to incorporate different initiatives at the elementary with the iPads that we currently have. We've got several dozen iPads that we have at our disposal. We want to start something at the elementary school also, but that doesn't involve any funds. so we already have that, but we don't want to leave those kids out. I discussed the issue of connectivity. Well, part of the proposal that we have is that when we get the laptops, we're going to image them with our base image for Windows and Microsoft Office. We're also going to install a Lightspeed agent, which means that anytime that those computers leave our environment and they go out into a home Wi-Fi or to McDonald's or any other hotspot, to connect to the internet, it goes back to our district. It comes all the way back to our policies, and they're filtered with Lightspeed. So connectivity, if they're going to connect to the internet, they're still going to be under our domain, under our policy. So that's one thing that we want to make sure that you understand. It's not, and if they try to bypass with proxies, well, we get reports. If a student is trying to bypass our filter, our content filter, we get a report on the computer name, the name of the student by ID, and so, we have little Tommy trying to go to proxy sites, we pick it up the next morning right away. It won't do it, but we know what's happening. Battery life, well, basically, we're looking at 4-hour battery life, so we anticipated that we were going to need charging stations throughout the campus. So when the students bring their computers, if they forget to bring their chargers with them, then we're going to have charging stations throughout the cafeteria, in the library, in some of the classrooms. We're looking at surge protectors and things like that. And then the issue of the missing or damaged devices. The proposal that we have before you includes a 3-year extended warranty contract for those computers for accidental damage. And so that's why those computers were a little bit more expensive than the ones that we would purchase for teachers because of the nature of the user. So as far as damages, yes. Missing, well, those are things that we're going to have to face because I know that Mrs. Gomez did face that for some that were stolen or lost, and so those are things that are typical of any type of technology or any time that you put that type of technology in the hands of the students.
One more thing, Casillas.
Yes, sir.
At one time you were talking about Wi-Fi county-wise, and talking to Commissioner Owens, he also wanted to do it. Maybe you two guys ought to get together and see what we can come up with.
That's a huge project, maybe when I retire. I'd love to do that.
No, just to talk, since he's wanted to do something, who knows?
The technology is out there, it certainly is.
I think Mr. Mesa has.
Yes, sir.
For inventory purposes, would you be able to track those devices?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Keyes?
Mr. Casillas, laptop for, wonderful thing for each kid. What happens if on the same day, 300 of them break up? Do we have the employee manpower to technicians to address that concern?
Not 300. I don't think any enterprise would have that, but certainly we'd give it a shot.
Okay. So we'll have access to quick repair.
Yes. Well, the proposal also includes a design of the infrastructure. So we are adding a lot of access points to make sure that if the computers are on campus, that we are able to push out enough power and internet or IP addresses so that they connect during the time that they're in school. So we're already there.
Ms. Lozano?
Just a quick question, going back to the lease. Could you, and this is moving forward, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned.
Mhm.
What is the possibility, or has there been any thought placed to actually having that one Dell computer that we're going to purchase this year follow that student throughout? So when you actually lease, because you said you'd want to extend it to maybe 10th grade.
Mhm.
So purchasing or leasing new ones next year for the incoming freshmen. Is that the plan?
Well, we've thought about that. And one of the things that certainly is part of the discussion, but we were hoping in the following year to have laptops for all of the high school students.
Oh, okay.
So those students that are at the ninth grade would leave those computers behind, we re-image them, we clean them up, and then the students would, when they go to the freshmen, to the high school, as sophomores, they would get new computers, as long as the 11th graders and the 12th graders too. So that's kind of what we were planning to scale it up to that level.
So the lease then that you're thinking about is actually to provide laptops for all the remaining high school students,
Yes, ma'am. That is
not just one
correct.
initial grade.
We're piloting freshmen, and we're going to look at all of these issues that we face, and we're going to make sure that we look at how efficiently they were used. We have to get the teachers to buy in, because it will help us to sell it and to make it successful. We have to make sure that the parents are part of this discussion. And so all of these little things on one campus, we hope to learn from, and then when we're ready to go, we'll bring it before you for the high school, and hopefully that will be something that will be approved.
Is there a need to have to wait till next year to do that?
Well, we didn't budget for it. I mean, you're talking about probably $500,000.
Dr. Rios?
And the infrastructure also. We have to build it up.
The fact that we didn't budget for it, we really need to have a good experience in a pilot program like the freshman before we take it to scale. If you look at the experience of Dr. Ponce in the Valley, he went and he had a huge district-wide initiative, and while the intentions were good intentions, most of the coverage that he got was how unprepared the district was to make that initiative successful, so that we hope that by starting at a smaller scale with a quarter of our students, we can learn and have enough success to where then we can move forward. So even if the board was to, because we certainly have the funds, even if the board was to provide that money, it would still be our recommendation that we hold off and start with this pilot program.
And just as a matter of fact, school districts throughout the nation have started one-to-one initiatives since 2000, just about. So, you know, we're kind of like,
And they even actually give the student a laptop as they graduate from high school. Very common.
so those are things that we can consider, but like Dr. Rios says, we hope to have a good experience, good learning. And above all, it's not just the fact of giving them the laptop, it's how they're going to use it, how they're going to become more proficient in the basic computer skills that are now necessary in our world. And I would venture to say that a lot of these kids will just excel. If you show them how to use PowerPoint, how to do brochures, pamphlets, I mean, it's just wonderful.
Other comments, questions for Mr. Casillas?
Good plan.
I think it is.
One thing, good job, Ms. Casillas.
Yeah.
Keep it up. I think you're doing a heck of a job.
And Ms. Pond.
Yes. I think it's a real good initiative, and I think it's manageable from what I'm hearing as far as a pilot, right? It's not just the idea, but all of the attendant items that go with it, like the connectivity and all these things. I think it's really well thought out. I look forward to seeing just how much progress we get out of it. And like Ms. Lozano saying, hopefully it's something that can be scaled up and expanded next year.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the one-to-one initiative at Del Rio freshmen from the instructional materials allotment funds with the issuance of the purchase order over $25,000 to Dell and Insight.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 8I, consideration to approve contract for services with ESC Region 20 to provide training for the middle school math teachers for Texas mathematics examination. Ms. Valdez presenting.
If I could, I need to apologize to the board, because even though I discussed this with y'all previously, and even though we agreed to move forward, this training actually started today. Now, it's obviously under $25,000, which I guess legally I would be able to authorize, but it hasn't been our practice. So we're bringing it today. I hope because of the calendar items, we couldn't have moved it to another day. Scheduling was difficult. So I want to apologize for that in advance and ask you to consider approval of the training with Region 20. It's specifically for our middle school math teachers to help them get a certification. Most of our middle school teachers have a 4-3 generalist. The research is clear. If we want to have successful learning, particularly in math, it goes to the content knowledge of the teachers. It's our hope to provide enough training for the teachers to where they can be successful in a 4-8 math composite. With that in mind, we sought different avenues, and we chose, because of my experience with one of the trainers in Region 20, Mr. Robert Luna, has had a lot of success. We engaged Region 20 in conversation, and we agreed on a contract. They did start the training today with 5 of our teachers. They'll have a second training later on in the month. That'll culminate with them taking the exam for certification and hopefully be successful with the training we're providing them. So we would ask that you consider approval of the contract.
Lozano has a question.
Dr. Rios, you mentioned, I believe, that there were 5 participants, but it states in this
13.
minimum of 10, so,
Yes, ma'am, because we're having 2 sessions with them.
okay.
Because of the summer,
Fine.
Dr. McNamara worked with the participants and allowed them to pick, and Region 20 was willing to send Mr. Luna down here on 2 different occasions.
It's a total of 13, I think.
A total of 13.
How many?
13.
13, yeah.
Any questions, discussion for Dr. Rios?
It's a good thing.
I just have a question for Dr. Rios. This is a contract with Region 20, not necessarily with the presenter.
No, it's with Region 20. It
Okay.
is not with a presenter.
So
It's just, I
can
have the
vote on it.
experience with a presenter, but you don't have to worry about a
Okay.
conflict of interest.
Okay, I'm related. All right, thank you.
Other questions? To me, it looks like a very good opportunity to increase content knowledge, certainly, so. Give us a recommendation. There's no other discussion.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent to sign the contract with Region 20 and authorize a payment as presented.
Heard the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. It brings us to 8J, consideration to approve the second reading of Policy Update 96, affecting local policies EFAA and FEB. Mr. Salinas is on the agenda, is presenting, and he's not here with us. Dr. Garza will be presenting for us tonight.
Once again, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. This is an update at 96, and it focuses on 3 key issues prompted by Commissioner of Education activity resulting on new rules on instructional materials, new rules on student attendance accounting, and a commissioner decision that affects how state personal leave and accrued and is calculated. The update also includes board members' powers and duties, the framework of school board development, legal services for district, bankruptcy discrimination, use of leave while on military duty, and student compulsory attendance. This is a second reading. The first reading took place on June 17th. Are there any questions?
No questions or discussion on this one? Okay, the recommendation then.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of Policy Update 96 and add, revise, or delete local policies EFAA and FEB as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 96 as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Is there a second? Is there a second? Ms. Lozano seconded. Okay. All in favor by a show of hands? Sorry. Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
That brings us to 8K, consideration to approve the second reading of revisions to BE local policy. Again, Mr. Salinas not with us. Dr. Rios will be walking us through this one. Dr. Rios?
Caribbean board members, during our Team of 8 training, we discussed and y'all agreed that we should formally move the time of the board meetings from 7 to 6. This is the second reading. It's very simple, just moving to 6 o'clock instead of 7.
This one's clear. This is what we asked for, what we decided was the best thing to do. Any discussion, questions? Okay. Recommendation?
This recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the second reading of revisions to BE local policy as presented.
For the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. That brings us to agenda item 8L, consideration to approve the first reading of revisions to DBA local. And on this one, Dr. McNamara will be presenting for Mr. Salinas.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. This evening I come before you to share with you about the DBA local policy. Under a separate cover, there were two documents provided in your packet. One was the original DBA local that started with parent notification, and the second document was DBA local revised and the new edition. Basically, in conjunction between the district and partnership with S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D legal, they have assisted us in the revision and adding the required math certification for middle school teachers. This goes hand in hand with the previous agenda item where they are receiving training, but the district needed to take a look at this particular policy and make the revision accordingly. So the major additions to this policy under this particular topic would be that effective with this coming school year for new hires assigned to a math classroom in grades 6, 7, and 8, they shall be required to have their 4-8 math certification by the end of the school year. Therefore, in that particular situation, if we hired someone with a 4-8 journalist, we would provide the training so that by the end of the year they would be certified with 4-8 math. Additionally, though, we took a look at the teachers that are already employed and assigned in those particular assignments at middle school. And so we are recommending this evening that those particular teachers already employed and assigned in a middle school campus shall be given until the year 2015-16 school year to satisfy this requirement. We wanted to make sure that they have time to have the training and successfully pass the test and apply for their certification for the 4-8 math exam. Additionally, we explored teachers or individuals, employees that have the alternative certification. We're recommending this evening that they shall complete the math certification requirement within 1 year of the date that their standard certification is issued. As an example, those teachers are hired under an ACP program, let's say as a 4-8 generalist. Once they get that certification, then we would give them an additional year within the 1 year after they get that certification to become 4-8 math certified. We also put a clause in here that the district shall pay the cost of training and testing fees related to this requirement. Additionally, if an employee does not satisfy those requirements, the district explored the provision to reassign. So S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D has recommended that we add this last clause: certified math teachers not satisfying this requirement within the required time frame may be reassigned to another position in the district if a vacancy for which they are certified is available, so that we could simply move them to another position if need be. So those are the, 5 components of this new proposal and revision to DBA local. Are there any questions?
Ms. Lozano has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. McNamara, regarding that last statement, where if someone doesn't satisfy the requirement, they may be reassigned to another position. What happens if there are no vacancies? And in addition, you said maybe. That doesn't necessarily mean they will be reassigned?
Correct. The language is maybe. Dr. Rios, did you want to respond?
Well, again, the language is recommended by TASB, but I want to be clear that the direction of the administration is to reassign people who are not certified and to work with people who would obtain that certification. I would love to be in a position to be able to say that we would never have vacancies in the 6th through 8th setting for which their certification will qualify them for. But the unfortunate truth is that we're always going to have vacancies, particularly in 6th through 8th grade. So reassigning people who do not meet the certification requirement as stated in the policy would be very easy to do. It's unfortunate that it would be that easy to do because that speaks to the turnover that we have. So we really want to use the policy as a way to clearly indicate from the board and from the administration that we expect our teachers to have the math knowledge to successfully impart upon the kids the skills that they need to be successful in higher learning going through high school. We're starting with math. Once we have a strong hold on math, then we would probably move towards science. But we have to start somewhere.
Dr. Keyes?
And I take it, since they're all certified, they'll open the possibility, there will be granted extensions also for certification.
Right, if they were ACP,
Yeah,
yes,
so
yes, sir.
It's not like it's gonna hit them all at once.
Correct.
They'll have an opportunity to extend another year or under permit. It's a good move though, because, looking at our previous recommendation, we talked about, math training for the Texas Mathematics Examination. And the participants from San Felipe Middle School and Darrow Middle School, I'm looking at that right now, and all of them are certified journalists.
Yes,
Not one of them is math.
that's correct.
It's a good move, be
That's
proactive
correct.
and get them all in that area going now.
Yes, sir.
Other questions, discussion? I think it's good. I mean, it's bold. I mean, it's squarely working on mathematics, which is an area that needs more focus. You move student achievement by empowering teachers. I mean, that means professional development, more training.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make a comment because I know that there's some teachers watching, and that there's going to be conversations. And I want to be clear that our intention is not to penalize teachers, but I would ask anybody viewing tonight who would feel better or not feel so good about having somebody teach their kids math who's not certified, who doesn't have the expertise in that. So our purpose is clearly to add value to our students' lives. And we do need to create that certain level of discomfort for our teachers so that they can get better. So we hope to work together. We've created enough training, and we're shouldering the burden of the cost. It's not to attack our teachers. It's just to make them better, to create a better setting for our kids. And that really is our intention.
Yes, it
It goes
is.
back to,
Right.
the state shot themselves in the foot with that. Back here, a couple years back, I remember when they switched certification levels, easy through 4, 4 through 8, 8 through 12. Well, in the old days, either elementary or secondary, and most people are going that way. So that's a big vacuum for 4 through 8. So there's a student shortage. So the state said, wait a minute, let's go back to the elementary, easy through 6, 6 to 12. They said, okay, and for that shortage we have in middle schools, we will allow the journalists to cover that also. It's caught up with local districts like we're addressing right now.
And to me, that statement, I think, is very clear. The district shall pay the cost of training and testing fees. So training
Yes,
is
sir.
courses, books. I mean, it's everything.
Yes.
Mr. Chavita?
Dr. Rios, on this certification, the test to is certified, is it going to be on content or methods in terms of how to deliver the mathematical, or is it actual knowing how to do math problems?
The training is clearly on content.
Yes.
Which is the part that gives them the hardest part in passing the test. I visited with the trainer over the phone before we came to the board meeting, he reminded me of the content that was covered today. He specifically mentioned we're moving into linear equations. It's good training. Like I said, I've had a lot of success in sending people to him before. This time, we're doing it through Region 20, but it's clearly content to it.
Anything else? Okay, the recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of revisions to DBA local policy as presented this evening.
Heard the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Now here's part two.
Okay, now we're on agenda item 8M, consideration to approve the first reading revisions to EHBE local. And again, Dr. McNamara.
Yes, sir. Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, we are presenting this evening EHBE local policy as a revision. The section that was added was required bilingual certification for elementary teacher and parent notification. Basically, this policy under your separate cover is outlined just like the math policy that I just presented. The exact same provisions that we have outlined in the math certification program are also outlined and endorsed by S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D under EHBE local. Are there any questions about that, since they mirror verbatim from one policy to the other?
Questions, discussion on this item? No? We're ready for the recommendation then?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of revisions to EHBE local policy as presented this evening.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept Dr. Keyes' motion? Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 8N, consideration to approve the first reading of revisions to DEC local policy on leaves and absences. And again, Dr. McNamara is presenting.
Yes, sir. Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening it's my privilege to present to you DEC local policy revisions. Our last revision was done in 2003. Therefore, the policy that was contained under separate cover, as you noticed, had a lot of additions and deletions, and basically in format. S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D is recommending that we move certain sections around so that it would flow better for us. So, this evening, what I'd like to do is focus on the first one, availability. The major change in this entire policy of 11 pages was the district shall make state personal leave, for the current year available for use at the beginning of the school year. In other words, it's an entitlement not earned by the number of days that they work. And that is the major provision or change in DEC local. And that is also outlined in your Vantage Points, the green document. And that was a case, I believe, with, go back to my reference, S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D versus South San Antonio ISD. And S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D is recommending, due to that litigation, that be included in DEC local. And this is the first revision. I'm sorry.
What green?
I'm sorry.
Is 96 or 97?
No, this is DEC local, and it's from
I think it's 96.
96.
Right, but what green document do we have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was the
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The original pack. We had to pull this document from, I think, the last board meeting because S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D did not have the final review for us. And we did have our staff, both Mary Pettis, Lori English, and Heather Casillas review the policy. And again, it flows much better because it had not been updated since 2003.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes.
Dr. McNamara, and
Yes, sir.
really this statement is really for Dr. Rios.
Yes, sir.
For DEC local, it is high time that we do something for our employees, and I'm talking about the unused sick leave. I have researched this, and we have, wonderful retirement ceremonies, but it's high time that we do something for our employees because we are giving them $25 for each day of unused sick leave. And it's really a slap in the face. I mean, this is something, I pay my limo drivers $25 an hour. They get $25 a day. I have done research on this item. Now, as a former administrator, school principal, I can tell you that this causes major problems. We have had, for example, assistant principals retire, principals retire, counselors, and what they choose to do over the $25 is they take their leave. They're out for 20 days, 50 days, whatever days they have accumulated. And I have researched this item. When you look at the surrounding districts, let's say Eagle Pass, they have a policy in place that is, they give every employee 50% of their daily rate at a maximum of 30 days. That is the standard policy for school districts. For us, it's a major headache. Again, that's a rate that I got when I retired, and it's really a slap in the face. I could not leave my campus using 100 days that I had left, and leave my campus unattended. But that's what employees do because, again, it's so out of line. We have, of counselors that have taken their days and everybody else, and it just is so inconvenient for the students. And again, when we look at that, and this is what Eagle Pass has: 50% of their daily rate times a maximum of 30 days. That's standard throughout the districts. We have not revised that before 2003. It's been the same ever since I've worked for the district. I worked for the district 35 years, coincidental, but that's been the same rate. It's never changed, and it's high time that we do something for our employees. That's DEC local.
Mr. Mesa, I think Dr. Rios wants to address some of that.
What we will do, Mr. Massa, is in gearing up for this next budget workshop, because there are budget implications, we will give an estimate of the amount of employees who would probably be retiring, their accrued leave, and what it would cost the district to fund such a proposal. And we'll use two models. We'll use a model from two different districts or three that currently have, because there are others, including some that I have worked before, that are similar to what you discussed. So we'll present that to the board as a discussion of part of our next budget workshop, because there are some serious budget implications for it. And then then the board just gives us direction on which way we should move. So we'll have some numbers for you at the next budget workshop.
Well, the only thing is, I wouldn't want to approve a DEC local without that change. And it's up for tonight, approval for tonight.
It's a first reading tonight,
Okay,
yes.
well, as long as that goes in place, with,
Sure, before the final reading, we'll have a discussion at the next budget workshop, and then we'll make changes as directed by the board.
wonderful.
Yes.
If directed by the board.
Mr. Chavita?
Well, I'm glad you're bringing this up because today I talked to Mrs. Valdez here earlier today, about noon, concerning some of the issues that I have with us. But you're right, we'll bring it up at the time that we, such as things that was good some years back, and people were abusing it, and instead of fixing it up a little bit, it was deleted completely, and I don't think it was right. In doing something where not only the people that are retired, but the people that are still on, that we can help, especially the young teachers. And I think we need to work up a program that other schools have. Yeah, I think it'll be a good thing, but I'll bring up some of the things that I have later on. But Mr. President, I'm glad you brought that out too. It's very important.
We'll give you some numbers.
Other questions?
And the thing about it, just one more thing, I'm always one of those guys that we need to keep our teachers. This would be one of the ways to keep our teachers to continue to do something for them. Not only the retired, but the ones that are on.
Well, as a school principal, every principal wants for their staff to be there. And all of us recognize that there's some staff members that will not They don't want to be absent, but yet this is how we reward them with $25 at the end. I mean, it should be an incentive that we have teachers that do not, abuse of their leave. And yet at the end, it becomes like a slap on the face. And so it's high time that we do something about it.
Anything else? Okay, the recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of revisions to DEC local policy as presented this evening.
We've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 in favor. All opposed? 1, 2, 3 opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 8O. Consideration to approve the first reading of Policy Update 97, affecting local policies CNA, DBAA, and GBBA. And Dr. Rios will be presenting in lieu of Mr. Salinas. Dr. Rios?
There's clearly been a lot of discussions on policy tonight, and when we have our administrative leadership meeting, as the administrators come back, we're going to have a lot of policies to review for them. Update 97 is the latest update that's provided. This will catch us up in terms of the updates. Today, we're asking you to consider CNA local, DBAA local, and GBBA local. Now, these three policies do have some substantive changes that I want to make clear tonight. I have had the opportunity to visit with a lot of y'all individually about how deep some of these changes go. The first was CNA local. That one doesn't have too much to consider, other than it allows for the administration to provide transportation for students that would not otherwise qualify, given room on the bus and the appropriate routes. So students that live within the 2-mile radius, if we have room on the buses, we could choose to do that. Prior policy required board approval. This just allows us to do it. On DBAA, this is a clear departure from what's been done in the past. This allows us to not disqualify an employee who's been convicted of a felony or who is being accused of a crime, disqualify them from employment. It allows the district a way to create a committee to identify whether the employee can add benefit to the students' lives, whether his or her crime, how old was he, what was the nature of the crime, because there's clearly differences in felonies. In GBBA, that one is a lot simpler. It just specifies that it is the superintendent who is the official spokesperson for the district. And that's probably the only indication there. Are there any questions about any policies? I can answer them, or I can ask my staff to help.
How far will we go on the crime history? How lenient will we be? I mean, what if it's a drunk driving or a child molestation?
Well, I think that, sir, if I may answer, like I said, there's differences in felonies, and I feel comfortable in saying that somebody with that nature that has to do with any type of injury to a child, they would not be S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D certified anyway. Whereas somebody with a DWI or a DUI would be S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D certified. What we would do, once the policy is approved and goes through the third reading, then we would go into our own regulations and specify the process by which we would study each case to determine if that person should be employed. But the key understanding here is that they first have to be S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D certified. So if we have somebody with a felony conviction that comes to us, first we're required to submit that person to S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D. And if S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D does not remove their certification, well, then that's somebody we would consider. But they first have to go through S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D. So we wouldn't be the sole ones deciding. We would just decide once S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D has allowed them to be certified or to continue with their certification, then how do we respond to that nature? And clearly S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D would not certify anybody who had brought some sort of injury to a child or whose ethics were somebody questionable. Somehow questionable.
Ms. Lozano?
Dr. McNamara? Yes, ma'am. Wasn't some preliminary work already done in this?
Yes, ma'am, last year.
Okay.
There was actually a first reading of the policy last year.
That's right, but some of those guidelines, or you were trying to set up some criteria as to who might
Yes, we have
pass for.
locally, absolutely.
Okay. And
But-
you obviously have access to that.
Yes, ma'am. But this policy is clearly different. Whereas that last year was a district, self-initiated
Right.
policy, this was coming from TASB.
And obviously, those who we've already hired, they haven't had their certification removed.
Correct.
So they would be grandfathered
Grandfathered in.
per se, right? I mean, they'd be safe.
Yes.
Mr. Chavita?
Yes, and I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because now we do have a policy. It's something to work on from, instead of throwing something at us and making a decision based on nothing.
And the assessment is locally created, right, on the, yeah, okay. So that puts it squarely within administration's ability to review. Other questions? And it was also based on EEOC guidelines, right? Did I read that correctly in the DBAA? Another discussion then on this one? Okay, the recommendation for this,
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the first reading of Policy Update 97 and add, revise, or delete local policies CNA, DBAA, and GBBA as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 97 as presented.
for the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned, Dr. Keys is second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous, motion carries. That brings us to agenda item 8P, consideration to approve the following pay grade change, title change, and revised corresponding job description, evaluation form, and new positions and corresponding job descriptions and evaluation forms. Pay grade change for SGLC Assistant Principal, title change, revised corresponding job description, evaluation form, Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction to Chief Instructional Officer, and new position, corresponding job description, Chief Instructional Officer, Elementary. Dr. McNamara, I believe you're presenting this, correct?
Yes, sir. Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, as you stated in the introduction, the administration is asking for your approval this evening to change the pay grade of the SGLC Assistant Principal from pay grade 4 to pay grade 5. I guess I'll go through each one of these and then ask for questions. The second one, under a separate cover, we included in your packet that was delivered last week, the job descriptions. So in the second item, the consideration for your approval this evening is for the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction, that person's title, to be changed to Chief Instructional Officer for Secondary, and will remain at the same pay grade that it is now, which is a pay grade 8. And the job description and the evaluation forms are in your packet. The third item this evening is consideration to approve the following new positions and the corresponding job descriptions and evaluation forms. And that would be for position number 1, a Chief Instructional Officer for Elementary at a pay grade 8 to mirror that of the Secondary Instructional Officer. The second position for your consideration this evening is a High School Attendance Officer at the secondary level at a pay grade 4. Are there any questions?
Okay, I think on this one, I would like Dr. Rios to elaborate a little bit more, especially on the two curriculum instruction changes, because I know this involves a larger organizational effort. Dr. Rios?
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board. When I came on board, in individual conversations with everyone present tonight and group conversations, we discussed the cabinet organization. And at that time, I indicated that I wanted some time to evaluate the needs of the district. Although I had done that in preparation for my interview, I wanted to do something here local. and I clearly stated that I did not want to hire or fill the vacancy of the deputy superintendent, that I wanted to wait and see what the needs of the district are. Over the last 2.5 months, I've researched and studied the needs of the district, and clearly, the biggest needs have to do with instruction. I think that in the past, we might have understood these to have some, maybe some budget needs. That is clearly not the crisis of the district. We are financially stable. So much so that if Ms. Yanakani Valdez had to present a budget for approval, she would probably be ready to do it, as early as next week. We're solid financially. That is not an issue. As we look at our standing in terms of state ratings, I have been clear in talking about where the district lies in terms of the FAST report, our academic rating system, where it rates with PBMAS. We've all seen how many campuses did not make the adequate yearly progress. And now we have this new accountability system upon us that draws on the 4 indices and STAR. I had somebody from Dr. Garza's office run some numbers for me on the tables this weekend, and it does appear that after the snapshot cleanup, that some of our campuses that may not have been academically acceptable will be. But the truth remains that we're barely going to be acceptable. We need to employ our efforts on the instructional leadership that we provide. Now, we've done a lot of work in developing a planning protocol that's going to be the job-embedded staff development on a daily basis. As you saw the PowerPoints that were presented by Mrs. Diaz and Mr. Ramos, they alluded to more engaging instruction, to deeper, more rigorous learning for the students. Well, that can only happen with a job-embedded staff development on a daily basis. But that includes a lot of oversight. We have to be more collaborative with our principals. It involves a lot of heavy lifting. And as happy as I could be with the hard work that individuals are doing in the district, it does not go deep enough. It certainly doesn't go far enough. I need some help with that heavy lifting because it is heavy. That is the greatest need of the district. So I have opted to redirect the dollars, with your approval, that we would have used for a deputy superintendent and divide the duties of the chief instructional officer into secondary and elementary. Very clearly, I would use Dr. Garza as the chief instructional officer for secondary, and I am requesting your permission to hire someone with the title of chief instructional officer for elementary. I hope that was clear enough, but I can certainly respond to any questions.
Questions for Dr. Rios on this?
Just to clarify, Dr. Rios, for our viewers, our principals, would they report to these two
Yes, ma'am.
positions? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. The principals between 6th grade, San Felipe Memorial, Del Rio Middle School, the 9th grade center, and the high school would report to the chief instructional officer for secondary. Pre-K through our other 7 elementary campuses would report to the chief instructional officer for elementary. Clearly, I'm the one in charge, and I'm not dismissing that. But there has to be a very direct connection between the instructional officers and the principals for that collaboration.
Other comments? Mr. Chavita?
I can clearly see the reasons for it, because I think it's very important. It's a big load, and sometimes you spread yourself too thin, and this way, Dr. Garza will have his smaller group and be able to do a better job. Not that he's not doing a good job, I'm saying that it'll be far more better for him, and in hiring somebody for the elementary, which is different, I think it's a good move.
If I could just add this piece, particularly with secondary and with the passage of House Bill 5, they're moving, for example, we're moving from a recommended high school plan to one that has certain endorsements. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. For example, students have been traditionally taking world geography and world history and then taking U.S. history their junior year. Well, now they only have to take one or the other. And we have to really focus, they have to take either world geography or world history, but then they have to take U.S. history. So there has to be a shift in how we're using our students' time and how we employ it in electives that are conducive to certification. And that takes a whole lot of rearranging in terms of the course offerings for the students. It's a whole lot of work. The high school's gonna need a lot of support in creating a new direction. And it's gonna be a different blueprint for a diploma under that new recommended plan. It's gonna be exciting, but it's gonna be a whole lot of work. So even though Dr. Garza would have the smaller parts of the campuses, the work that's required at the secondary with passage of House Bill 5 is gonna be enough to keep a few people busy moving forward.
Other questions? I think it's a good approach. I think if we step back and kind of look at the first steps we've taken on some policy issues to strengthen teachers' abilities to teach in their area, I think that clearly speaks to instruction, the efforts we're making in terms of a reorganization of sorts at the administrative level. I mean, we have to move decisively. I think focusing elementary, chief instructional officer there, secondary, chief instructional officer, to me it makes perfect sense. I think it's a good move. I don't know if anyone else has questions or comments for Dr. Rios?
I guess I have to again. The scores will tell the story.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's a good point.
And it's unfortunate, but I mean, that the evaluation is based on scores, just like, again, how principals are evaluated. And I'm talking about to Dr. Rios, because again, the evaluation is based on scores, and so there's a lot of work to be done. And I just want a plan put together to make sure that, you know, we don't come up at the very bottom and then end up getting an F, because, you know, those are the ratings that will be coming. A, B, C, D, F. No E.
And it's with that thought in mind that that we need to move in this direction, because the board has been clear with me that the evaluation of the district, evaluation of the principals, and my evaluation should be based on results. And as stressful as it may become, that's a reality. And it's one that we don't take lightly. So because we're in that situation, I appreciate your support in moving forward in this direction.
We're good? We're ready for the recommendation? Thank you, Dr. Rios. Recommendation?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of the administration that the position changes to include pay grade and title changes, new positions, and the corresponding job descriptions and evaluation forms be approved as presented this evening.
For the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the last discussion action item, and that's Q, or the last one in this grouping. Consideration to approve TASB delegate and alternate. We're all familiar with this. This is upcoming in September at the annual S.F.D.R.C.I.S.D convention. It's an important role. It's something that is important not only to us as a board, but as a district, keep us informed. I know Dr. Keyes has served us well in the past. I don't know how the other board members feel about it. I'd certainly like to see him do it again if he's willing, or if someone else.
I feel the same way.
Are you willing, Dr. Keyes? I mean, we need your leadership on something like this. I know you've done it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, no objections then. Dr. Keyes will be our TASB delegate. We need an alternate as well.
I'll volunteer.
Okay, Mr. Mesa, everyone concur with that? Okay, very good. So Dr. Keyes will be our TASB delegate, and Mr. Mesa will be the alternate. Ms. Falcone, if you'll make the arrangements to do that. Okay. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 9, closed session. It's now 8:19 PM, July. Yes, sir. We didn't last year. We didn't vote. We just. Yeah, we just did it like that. We didn't vote last year, so we should be good like that.
Sorry to interrupt.
It's now, like I said, 8:19 PM, July 15th, 2013. And the board will now recess this open session, convene in a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. We can do that under 551.071, 551.072, 551.073. Specifically tonight, we do that under 551.074. The first item being discussion of new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Number 2 being discussion of approval of Director of Student Services. We're also able to do that under 551.076, 551.082, and 551.084. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open meeting. We're now in closed session. Okay, it's now 9:41 PM, July 15th, 2013. And the board will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. Brings us to agenda item 11, now that we're reconvened, and the first one is a consideration to approve new hires, new assignments, district vacancies, and reassignments. Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. At this time, the administration would like to recommend the following personnel recommendations for your consideration this evening. Maria Hudgens, Del Rio Middle School ELA 7th grade teacher. Mr. Martin Cardenas, physical ed teacher at Del Rio Freshman School. Arnulfo Rodriguez, physical education teacher at Del Rio High School. Ms. Sharon Fernandez, English teacher, Del Rio High School. We'd also like to recommend these personnel recommendations. Ms. Jessica Gallegos, registered nurse, Ruben Chavita Elementary School. Robert Gonzalez, 5th grade teacher at North Heights Elementary School. Ms. Janie Cohen, 1st grade teacher at Buena Vista Elementary School. We'd also like to recommend Ms. Jennifer Billings, assistant principal at San Felipe Memorial Middle School. And Mr. Arthur Mendez, assistant principal at North Heights Elementary School.
We've heard the recommendations. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motioned. Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 11B, consideration to approve Director of Student Services. Dr. McNamara presenting.
Okay, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. At this time, the administration respectfully recommends Mr. Rodolfo Valdez for our Student Services Director.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Chavita has motion. Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? It's unanimous. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, being no further business before this board, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor? Unanimous. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.